Hello, welcome back to the Glassgirl Network. With me, Jonathan. I've got two very special guests, and just right from the off, that intro really gets me in the mood, and it's a great intro to have for this particular show where we're going to reminisce a little bit about the past 4 years and everything else in between all that as well. So, first of all, thank you for joining me. Ken, how's you and the family, mate?
Yeah, we're all good. Yeah, looking forward to the weekend. Birthday on Sunday. Hopefully, Mick's fitting well to play against Stoke. So that'll be a nice birthday present for me.
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for coming on. I know this is a long time coming. I know that we've been on about it for a few weeks, if not months, and it's great to actually have you on. So thank you very much for coming on, Ken.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, no problem, mate. Mark, you only do live shows. You was on the last live show, was it? We've only ever done 3 live shows, and this is the third one. So, Mark, thank you for coming on. How's you and your family?
All right, just getting older. It's funny because it's my birthday in 2 weeks as well. But I'm a little bit older than Ken, I think.
Only a little bit.
And it was my birthday.
I'm not celebrating it.
Look, this is live for a reason. If people want to put comments on, we can put them on screen. Please be a bit mindful of what you're putting on. I think we're all thick-skinned here anyway, but no, let's enjoy ourselves. We're going to have about an hour or so. So yeah, we're here for quite a little while. Just first off, just a little bit about my thoughts with yourself, Ken. I think even though you've never been on the show, we spoke for about 3 or 4 years, and people know me, and that they know that I love getting information and I love learning about the game. And I think when I speak to you, we don't just discuss Stourbridge. You know, we speak about everything in the Midlands area, and I absolutely love that. And I think we agree on 95% of the things, and the 5% that we don't necessarily agree on, we've never let it ruin our friendship, and we still talk, you know, at least once a week. I remember the voice notes when Meg wasn't even at Stourbridge. We still used to voice note to each other. So just straight from the off, Ken, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, and it's been a pleasure, you know, having you around, you know, the fan base with me for the past few years. So just a bit of a thank you there, Ken.
Cheers, mate. I mean, I think you know, it's clear that we're both advocates for the women's game. I've been around girls football, women's football since Meg was 8 or 9. Have my opinions. Some of them are not well received, some of them are, but you know, can only go by my own experiences and stuff. I've learned along the way as well. I've been hypocritical about stuff that I might even say today, and I accept that. But you know, I think the women's game is evolving. Fans are evolving. Coaches, clubs are evolving. So as long as it all goes in the right direction and it's positive for all the right reasons, then I think we're all on the same page, really.
100%, yeah. When we talk about evolving, let's talk about our tier 5, tier 6 days. So obviously I came into it at tier 5. Ken, yourself, Mark, you was a little bit further back. But I want to just open the first conversation about how Stourbridge led the way in the West Midlands area by paying expenses, by basically just showing that it can be done in a quite a strategical way. I suppose that was a big part down to recruitment by having the right people around as well. Mark, you probably got the earliest memory out of all 3 of us. What were your thoughts when maybe as May first joined the club, and your first thoughts on, you know, Stourbridge being the one that's really been the driving force in the Black Country?
Well, surprised. I had a phone call from Andy apparently. Said, would your ace want to join Stourbridge, you know, and would she know any other players who play for the likes of Wolves or Albion or anyone that would be interested in joining? And I'm thinking, well, it'd be perfect for her because she's at Worcester Uni, just finished at Stoke, which was not the easiest place to get to when you don't drive. Tier 6 club. We went to the trials, and I couldn't believe the standard of the people that were there, like Courtney Murphy smashing it around. There's not much difference what I can see here in these people who are trialing at Dudley than what I've been watching at Wolves and Stoke. I would never in a million years have thought that the team could have gone from 6 to 5, then COVID, then 5 to 4 to 3. Andy Fisher, the first time I met him, you could just tell there's something about that guy that he's, like you said, he's the glue. He was so welcoming, he was so positive. So Yeah, great times. They're the best times.
Yeah. Anything to add to that one, mate?
Yeah, I remember when Meg left West Brom, the 21s development, what you want to call them, and she went to Leafield, where she first met Aid and played open football again. COVID had an impact on that. And she posted a couple of videos of herself and stuff, and she mentioned that Mike, I think, had been in touch from Stourbridge and told me what tier they were in. I said, well, you're actually dropping down a tier. And she said, yeah, but I've been out to see them. I like what they're telling me. I like what they're saying to me about the journey that they're on. And I think it's something that I want to be part of. And I think that's key. You know, when you can engage with a young female of 17 years of age, 18 years of age, and give them an insight into what are trying to achieve with a football team, I think that's quite special. And especially to capture the imagination of a young upcoming player as well, because as we've learned, and we'll probably discuss a little bit more in the content of this show, that not all players want to drop down. Some believe they should be playing higher, but some will if they think it's right. I think that's fundamentally what I believe Stourbridge was all about. And let's be honest, they proved us right, both with Andy and Mike and everybody else involved. You know, that journey was right, and they were exactly 100% on what they delivered.
Well, what do you think? And then when you just mentioned Meg there, Mike asked her to come for a trial or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is that because Mike was at Birmingham Academy at that time? Is that the same era? Because at one point,
no, I think it was based on some social media stuff. What Meg had put on a couple of videos. I think there was a big long range goal that she'd scored, and she was invited to come down and trial and wherever else. And I think that was the catalyst for it. And then I think, you know, Andy saw a true story about Andy, which I will tell you. But I think Andy saw a young, up and coming, quick defender that could help with the team as it was. And brought Megan. But I always remember halfway through the season, Fish come up to me and he said, you know, I think Meg's probably one of the best left-footed players I've seen for a while. And I said, that's really, really nice of you to say. And he said, oh, that's okay. I said, yeah, she's right-footed. Yeah, I'll always remember that moment.
Yeah. Mark, you mentioned welcoming. I couldn't agree more. Obviously, it was a smaller women's section back then. No development team. I think did it have like an under-18s team at that point, and then they created a development team and reserve team after then. So I think it was just pretty much the first team that was in Tier 5 when I first started, and then an under-18s that played on a Saturday that I used to attend, and that's when Tom and Sav was there, Callum as well. I think those were the three coaches at the time there. But yeah, Andy's obviously the first one to invite you in. In my case, it was because I used to speak to Andy as a Man United fan on Twitter. And then me being me, I do a bit more digging. Then I've probably found Harry and Mike on there. And then I remember Andy the first 2 or 3 times. And even now, a kid Mr. Harry is, you know, I don't go into the players area unless if I'm invited in. And I remember the first time that he invited me back into the War Memorial Ground after a game at Inglis. And he said, do you fancy coming back to the clubhouse? I was like, really? Yeah, okay. Not realising at the time that it's kind of like a normal thing to do. But then when I was there, every single player as well, you know, like made me feel welcome. And I suppose it was a bit smaller then because you had parents as fans, but I don't suppose you had as many people there supporting that wasn't a relative. So I suppose, like, obviously I was completely brand new to Midlands women's football, so maybe they just kind of saw that and thought, okay, well, let's just welcome them in, you know. But they like it with absolutely everyone. So yeah, I think welcoming is like the first key word there for myself, and I think Stourbridge always has been. I think that's a massive selling point of this club, hasn't it? Obviously we talk about Tier 5, Tier 6, memorable moments. And so when you think about this kind of era, or even Tier 4 as well, before this season, what's like your highlights? What do you kind of think of the most?
There's something you just said there about welcoming and the camaraderie against all the players. At Hingleys in the early days, there was a bit of a bad challenge. Ez went up, landed on a head, ambulance covering the silver blankets, and Helen was in the car because it was a tight game. Crusaders it was. We were winning 1-0. I ran on the pitch. Amy Preston's holding Essie's head, and it's like, has she broke her back? This happened again at Wolves a couple of seasons later. And the ambulance came, and she could move her feet and her toes. They checked her out. And all the players, again, apart from the Crusaders manager, with the referee, it was 87 minutes, and the referee abandoned the match and we won. The Crusaders manager came up and said, "We are going to replay it, aren't we?" I'm not a violent person. Ken would have knocked him out without the question. No, I know I'd have been happy if you had. They checked her in the ambulance. Everything was fine. And she's ashen white. And she said, "Do I have to go to hospital?" And I said, "No, you're okay. So I can go back to the club then." And that was how much it meant. She sat at the club with a orange squash again, but that was just to get back to the club. That was the atmosphere there, and Andy welcoming everyone, speaking to everybody, the players, the supporters. That was every Sunday was just when I was young, it was like going out on a Saturday night. Okay, there was a little bit too much of the this perhaps, but the bond between the players and the coaches and the management was just staggering. So that is one of my, forget the playing, which was important, the results were important. That is a memory which I'd never experienced before. I don't think we'll ever experience again. Huge. The band of brothers stroke sisters, that's a big memory for me.
I think you're right with what you're saying there. I mean, it's difficult to pinpoint one memory. I think we were very lucky. I would call them the 2 years that I would call that, you know, being promoted from Tier 5 and then Tier 4 into Tier 3. I'd call those 2 years pretty much the golden years. I don't think we'll replicate it again. I don't think anybody else will replicate it again. I know Andy's trying with his journey in Kidderminster, and I wish him all the best with that. And he seems to be going in the same direction, which is great. But those were special years, and I don't think you could literally, when you think of one memory, you'll find another. So games that I would look at memories of, obviously the Derby game, we'll never forget that. I never forget losing to Sheffield in the first game in Tier 4. It was my dad's birthday. I think the management got it wrong. The formation was wrong. I think Alex Nicklin was not being played on that day in the first half. And anybody who knew what Alex was like, you would build your team around her at that current moment in time at Stourbridge. She was that good. Still is that good. For me, Cambridge. Can you remember Cambridge in the FA Cup? Freezing cold, dominated the first half. Second half, we hang on. But for me, my own personal memory, because of Meg, was Donnybell's away. They hadn't lost for 500 years at home, or wherever it was. And Meg scored an absolute worldie of a goal. Bettered it in the midweek game against Wem. But yeah, just to come away with, I think we won 3-0. Was it little Beth scored? Was it Alex scored and as well? Was it 3-0, I think? And what's lovely for me is, as a dad and as a memory, I can keep reliving that memory because it's on YouTube. Donny Bowles have put it on there. So as long as it's on there for wherever I can. And I very often watch it. It just the highlights brings a smile to my face. But them 2 golden years was special. And anybody that was part of that will totally understand what I'm saying about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think
it just reminded me about the Cambridge game, because Ez did a 1-2 with a crossbar and headed it in.
Yeah,
it was on the telly. It was on Midlands Today, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Except they called her Esme Morgan. But and the coach, remember the coach crashed into the clubhouse?
Yeah,
and they couldn't go back. Yeah. All these things you forget about them. Absolutely fantastic memories. My favourite memory game, there was 7-2 baggies yet, but you know the one it's going to be Stoke. Stoke, that 2-2 Zoe Clark 6-minute equaliser, when the second half we just dominated. Ez pulled one back to make it 2-1, which she said basically she pushed a couple of defenders out of the way. It's a total foul. She grabbed the ball out of the net before anyone could sort of blow the whistle. And with the seconds that remained, Stoke they were like, just please end the game. We turned it around completely. I think, was it Albion first and then Stoke? Or was it Stoke and then Albion?
Oh, I can't remember. I think Albion Stoke was it.
No, I think it was Albion third. I don't know. I weren't really part of it, but obviously I was keeping tabs on it. So
yeah,
that was not winning the league. That was
I like it. Yeah,
somehow better than the Baggies one, that 2-2. And we can. How have we done this? This is Stoke. We can compete against Stoke, and obviously with West Brom. Obviously lost a couple of key players after that, and it got hard. But yeah, great memories. But yeah, the early days for me still.
I think what was a few things there, what you guys have just mentioned, Cambridge, that was like still a team that was a league higher than us at the time.
Yeah.
So we spoke a lot about Derby and Sheffield United, playing them the championship side. But let's not forget that we also beat, like you say, Cambridge. It was a league above us at that time as well, which I don't think gets spoken about enough.
And Hull, weren't they? Hull were in the league above, or were they the same?
No, they were in the Northern League, weren't they? I think they were the equivalent. I mean, you've got to remember the Cambridge game as well, just to reiterate the support that you talk about. Leon Broadhurst was there, current first team men's manager at the time, assistant manager was there. I think Bully was there. I mean, to go to Cambridge, which still feels like to me, I don't know if you remember, Mark, it was like the coldest day ever. It was freezing. But the support that was there, the FA Cup magic that we had, the journey and all that, it's just all worthwhile.
Yeah.
Gary Hackett said to me, he said, this won't last. Enjoy the moment. That's football. It won't last. And I was thinking, yeah, of course it will. Of course it will last. Yeah, but he was right.
But the good thing is we was all there to, feel those glory years. And I think we was also very lucky that we was on a movement in regards to women's football at the time. So not only did Stourbridge get promoted 3 years on the trot, Lionesses won the European Cup. They then backed it up with being finalists at the World Cup. So everything in regards to women's football around Stourbridge at that time was just booming, wasn't it? And you guys talk about your favourite memories, and yeah, absolutely those. I'd like to throw in, obviously there's so many, but when it actually comes to making an impression on Stourbridge, and who probably doesn't get spoken about enough because she was only there for 1 year, and there's a few players that you can name here. I'm going to mention Lindsay Glover, because Lindsay took to it like a duck to water. The first time I saw her in the clubhouse watching the European finals, and we watched every game in the clubhouse together. But more importantly, on the field, she scored that winning goal against Leafield, which was like extra time, and that was the first time that I was actually commentating on the radio doing that. These little memories stick in your head, and there's so many memories, but for me, that was always in my head. And yeah, obviously she left after 1 season, but there's so many players that you can name, so I'm only going to name the one.
Look at the profile she got from being on Sky Sports as well, and that's a memory, and that's special. Yeah. Again, it put Stourbridge on the map. I mean, my memory of Lindsay Glover is slightly different, because she went out with Meg the one night and took half an hour to get her shoes off before I had to feed her a whole loaf of toast to try and sober her up. But that's a different story. But yeah, Lindsay is a great character. She's obviously played at a very good standard. She was a breath of fresh air at Stourbridge, wasn't she? Yeah. And she was, you could see why a lot of girls looked up to her as well. And an amazing futsal player, don't forget, as well.
Yeah. Well, don't forget she came from Kelso, which was the league that we went into. So it's like at that time we stole 3 of Kelso's players, didn't we? And obviously we used those players to help us get promoted with Angie Morley and Sarah Hazel. Yeah.
I think when you talk about key players like that, I would also throw in the mix, Lois Jeffries and Lexi. That season that we were getting promoted, I mean, Niamh Deasy was banging in goals, and then like most strikers, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, hit a bit of a dry patch. And Mike and Andy at the time brought these 2 players in, and I was one of the ones that thinking, well, what are you doing? We've got a good team, we're doing well. Why are you going to bring 2 strangers into the mix that could really affect the morale of the team? And do you know what? What a clever move that was, because I generally believe them two players help us get over the line. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Forget what's happened after and all the rest of it, but I generally believe that without those two introductions, we may not have got promoted.
Go on, Mark.
Well, it's always the strikers, it's always the goal scorers that get the credit, and we needed the entire team. So, yeah, there are the important players that score goals, create goals, but it's the defence as well, the midfield that provide the passes for those players to bang them in, and the goalkeeper, which is the situation at the moment, isn't it, with Harriet? So, yeah, while Lexi, an amazing player, and that will always be the debate, did Wolves buy to weaken us or to improve them? When they'd gone, or when Lexi had gone particularly, and Neve, it damaged us. A small squad, not like the big clubs. It really did damage us, and the morale, I think, fell, and players were saying, are we actually going to get another point? So yeah, important, but at the same time, there were issues with attitude and the feelings that other players within the team had towards them, which obviously resulted in, when Mike taking over, he made a decision, certainly with two of them, Lexi not, but yeah, difficult. And that's when it gets to that level. Like Lindsay Glover, my memory of her was when we were having the party, when we got promoted in the clubhouse, and we're going up to tier 3, and she was in the corner crying.
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's going mad, and she's seen it, and I've seen it as well. Things are changing now. And she said, I can't carry on because I can't train 3 times a week. I can't do it, my job, I can't do it. And she wanted to, I would imagine, but she just couldn't do it. It's now changing to a different level. No alcohol after the games, going to the gym as well. Everything is changing. Things are getting more serious. And yeah, the management is having to consider making choices that possibly not going to be very popular. So,
yeah, but that, I think that's a fine line as well. You look at Stourbridge Football Club; they're a business. From the moment they open the gates to pay the cleaners, to opening the bar, the lights, whatever, and that was a large revenue stream. I get that with the socials after the games and all that. And you know, I would say that I think people don't refer to both Andys, you know, the chairman and etc. That, you know, they've been instrumental in the fact of paying the expenses and putting Stourbridge on this journey, as well as the managers, and they sit in the background. Bully for sure, as I always remember him at most away games and making the effort to turn up and stuff. And then you've got to make a decision, haven't you? What do we do as a football club? Where do we want to be as a football club? Do we want to play in the higher tiers and try and make this professional model? Just because we play Sunday football doesn't mean we should have a Sunday football mentality. Or do we go back to those golden years? I'll keep referring to them as the golden years, those 2 years, because for me they are. And do we try and compete with the full times, the hybrids, and go that way? And it's a difficult thing, because I think certain fans want to see one thing because they've experienced it. Certain players want to see one thing because they've experienced it. And I suppose there's pros and cons both ways when you look at it, Mark, that, you know, that team building, which I was probably not a lot of part of, and nor was Meg, that happened in the clubhouse after games, was probably instrumental to a lot of the success as well, I would suggest. Yeah, definitely. And this was discussed, you know, the bar takings are down, but we need to get fitness up. Did it really make that much difference with the level of opposition we were playing against? I don't think it did. But Brian Clough and Nottingham Forest and Derby used to have a few points on the way to the games, which nowadays you look at the way diets go. We were trying to emulate that at Tier 3 ladies football. And yeah, with Lindsay, I'm looking at that party going on as we're going up into Tier 3, and I'm thinking, I'm not seeing a party here as a celebration. This is like a wake, potentially, because things are going to change.
Are they going to change, maybe for the better, but for the more or less enjoyable for all concerned? And also the takings, the bar takings, which Jason was saying, they're terrible now, yeah, because we were having a Saturday night out every Sunday afternoon, and the supporters as well. And when
every Friday and weekday as well.
Well, the opposition, they couldn't believe it because they'd be there, and I think this club's got everything. They've got the ground, they've got facilities, the physio's got the defib and the stretchers. You know, this club, but they're playing on little fields, you know, like where Lee Field were playing at the time, nothing. And they're also having a damn good time after the games too. They've got the chip van outside. Wow, this is like a carnival every match. So I don't know. If I'd have been a player that had got to choose to stay at a club that has now got this fitness regime and no alcohol, no wine, and going to the gym and having your weight monitored and all that, I probably would have thought, I'm gonna go down and tier 4 or tier 5. And what Ken, you said about your rugby, didn't you? All strive to be the best, and say the same with Megs. I would probably be one that, in our band, you can be in a band, you can go to try and get a deal and get a hit, or just play local pubs and enjoy yourself, like amateur dramatics that I'm involved with as well. Do you want to be an unemployed actor?
Yeah.
Or
I think Megs was a little bit different. She's not a big drinker. I think I'll probably put her off over the blooming years, if I'm being honest. But I think there are, individually, people are different as well, and that's what's lovely about a team, isn't it? You get a menagerie of different characters. People have got different lifestyle choices that they make, but I did notice that there was a closeness around that. I was never an advocate for the large amount of drinking. If that's just me, I think there's a short life to being a footballer and a girl, but I have to agree as well with you, Mark, that made probably their memories even better, didn't it? And that togetherness within the club. But you know, it depends what players want, and it depends how old they are and how hard they want to play in the tiers that are there. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's a lot changed on match day. And I'll quickly touch base on that. It's not on topic, but I might as well mention it. So obviously when Meg left Stourbridge, even though she's consecutively played for Stourbridge, I think for the last 4 seasons, even leaving and coming back, which is quite funny. We went to Sutton, and you know, Sutton have got their own ground and their own clubhouse. And I just felt there was no atmosphere. And I'm sorry, Sutton fans and Sutton, it's nothing directly at anybody. It's my own personal view. People were lovely, but I've gone from an experience of my first time of ever seeing football fans at a girls' game that weren't parents, as you rightly said previously, to the support even when the reserves were playing or the other teams were playing, if they could get back to watch, they were there.
Yeah.
You'd have local people turn up because they wanted to watch women's football. They wanted to watch Stourbridge ladies play on a Sunday. We had big crowds. And then to go to another club like Sutton, where there was a handful of people, it felt strange. Mm-hmm. It really felt strange. So there is definitely something that Stourbridge created that I noticed from going to another club.
And it's not too hard to maybe get back, because it does sound like that we went from like one extreme to the other over the last maybe 12, 18 months when we went to tier 3, or with a change of management, whenever it might have been. But it won't take too much to just find that level playing field, because I'm sure the players have a drink on the weekend. Even, you know, it doesn't have to be at the War Memorial Ground. I'm sure they still, you know, enjoy the weekends and time away from work. I'm sure they want to obviously celebrate any wins that they get next season, if they do end up in tier 4. And as you rightly said, and I mentioned this quite recently as well, getting the reserve team back into the grounds as well. And I'm not too sure what Ryan Magson's age group is. There's a very good chance that a lot of them are under the age of 18. So maybe that's the reason why they don't come back on Sundays now. But that Sunday was 50 players, about 30 odd parents and about 20 fans with bar staff, with club officials, all being there. And wasn't it great when we celebrated all 3 wins when every team had won as well? And everyone just came back and, like, you know, it was great. And I don't think that particularly has to vanish. You know, that's something that can come back quite easily. Probably not this season, but maybe next season. Just moving on, we've mentioned players, we mentioned the board, chairman. We haven't mentioned too much about the managers yet. So obviously we mentioned Andy Fisher. Marcus String, you in there when Mike took over, because it was a very sad time to see Andy leave. Obviously, I was upset when I saw the tweet go out, and then obviously I was very happy that it was Mike, because even though I knew there would be changes, they weren't radical, and not in the sense of, like, say, when I took over, because it was a brand new person. At least Mike knew the club. He was part of it for 4 years at that point. So it wasn't as radical. So for me, I was very happy that Mike took over. What were your thoughts, Mark, when you realised that Andy was leaving and then Mike was taking over?
Well, first of all, there's moments in your life when you get news which is shocking, like John Lennon being shot, Princess Diana having a bit of an accident in the tunnel, and Andy Fisher has quit. And that was, for me, because it's now become such an important part of our life, because we really are. We've got 4 kids, and following Stourbridge around, and the people we know there, the players, the supporters, it's now going to change. Something's going to change. Who's going to take over? And I think it was rumoured at the time by a friend of mine. I won't mention his name. You know who I'm talking about, John, who is the oracle of football. He knows everything and tells me things before they actually happen. He said to me that Aid was going to take over, which I think, had that have happened then, it wouldn't have been a bad thing, and kept on perhaps Mike and Tash. But Mike took over, and he had to make one thing. I will say about Mike and is, they're very, very careful not to tell me virtually anything, because they know I can be a bit goblin. So they tend to not discuss football much.
Mark, I'll always remember this. In the summer, you says to me, John, do you know where Esme's playing next year? And I'm like, she's your daughter. You should know before me. Yeah. But that was quite funny.
You know, when you said you were doing an interview with her, which she hadn't told me, you know, doesn't tell me anything. So I even when Mike was appointed, I wasn't told. I was told when everyone else was told. So I was kind of happy, but at the same time, because they were a couple, I think that could always have an accusation with Mike. Is he picking Ez because it's, you know, his partner? And when she occasionally was picked as captain, the same, although apparently it was Tash that pushed for Ez to be captain when she was. I kind of was pleased but worried, because again, my association with Stourbridge, I was born in Stourbridge. 3 of our kids are born in Stourbridge. I love the club, and other clubs I've been at when Ez has played and left, you've not had the same affinity, like going to Stoke, you've got nothing there. And I always knew there would be a time that when Ez left, would I want to support Stourbridge? Will I, you know, and the people who got there. And if now Mike is the manager, for whatever reason Mike leaves or gets the sack, Ez leaves, it will all change. So I was a little bit. I'm a very worried person all the time. I'm very, glass half full. So I was really pleased, but at the same time concerned. That's a strange answer, which doesn't really give an answer. But yeah, so very, very, very pleased. And he's such a talented guy. Like the work that he puts in, which probably don't know about, but he'd be watching the opposition on videos. He'd be noting which players are doing what, which again, in the situation that Stourbridge were in then, when we came up, we were the whipping boys, whipping girls. We came up with Newcastle, who were tipped to win the league. To stay in that division, we'd got to depose 2 established teams. It's a bit different now because Calcer and Hull have come up and Stourbridge are well established. So we hadn't really got a chance, and you can understand Andy leaving. I know this is a big answer to this one. We were walking back from Schneefeld on the Isle of Man, and Stourbridge were 1-up against Derby. Great half time. By the time we got to the bottom, I think it was it 7-1 in the end? And that's when Andy decided, I've done as much as I can do and I'm quitting. So it was a monumental task to take on that team and hopefully survive. But if not, well, it's a bit like the baggies going up. I don't want to go up. You know, we've got the championship. It's competitive games and no VAR. But if we do go up this season in the playoffs and they come straight back down again, well, fine. And I think that's the way it should have been looked at by the owners in the event it Mike did actually, and Tash keep them up. So yeah, that was my feelings from the start about Andy leaving. Everything's going to change here, and it may not be as nice as it was before.
Okay.
My view is obviously slightly different, but I'm going to be quite honest about stuff, and hopefully you'll understand that. So I think Andy didn't just leave because of the results. Andy'd got a lot going on in his life, and anybody knows Andy, he's either fully committed to something or he isn't. And I think that when he saw the stuff that was going on at Stourbridge and that he couldn't control, or all the results or something, that could have been ultimately helping towards the decision that he needed to step away because he couldn't commit and needed stuff to do in his personal life, and that's purely down to him. But I'll always thank him for the golden years. Keep mentioning it. We'll keep at the golden years. Will come up all the time on Twitter. But and then obviously Mike took over, and it was a difficult time for me because Meg had played Kelso in the pre-season 2 days before we were on holiday, sustained an MCL injury, a tear. She was in and out of the team. She had half a game at Burnley and stuff. And Mike broke my heart because what happened was, I'm a West Brom fan. Meg's a West Brom fan. Meg was at West Brom Development. And for me as a dad, I always wanted her to play at a level that the first team played at, West Brom first team played at, wanted to be, that to me was her benchmark at that point. And I was really excited. I'm going, right, we've got Stourbridge at home against West Brom. It's a midweek fixture, which we love under the floodlights. And she came home upset and said, I'm not in the squad. And I went, what do you mean you're not in the squad? You just had half a game for Burnley. She said, Mike has been quite honest with me, wants me part of the squad, but I'm not going to be in the team against West Brom, and that I've got to wait for my chance. And I got quite upset about it. She didn't, and eventually left. However, no Mike. He's not a bad guy. I think I'd call him a stat man for what he puts together. Like Mark said, he's constantly looking at footage and ways to beat teams, and he's very much about that information. And I was shocked that you've got somebody who's taken over from somebody like Andy Fisher and managed to keep the team in Tier 3 with Tash. And let's be honest, look what Tash has done this year with Leafield, the players that she's attracted. I think she's going to be the next big manager in the women's game. I think her future there's no ceiling for that. She understands the game, she understands the girls, mental health and all that. And regardless of my own personal opinions on that day and how I felt, I was legitimately shocked that that Stourbridge was getting rid of a player based on how he'd performed, how he'd kept the team in, and quite comfortably kept him in, I think, and could afford to lose games in the latter stages of the season because he'd done that with Tash. And then being told as well, was it 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the season? So I did feel sorry for Mike. And like I say, I generally believe that he didn't deserve that for performance reasons alone. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I don't know what happens at the board and what the club decide and all of that. I'm purely going on performances. He's a guy that's taken over from the Oracle, which at the time was Andy Fisher. And he's kept a team that nobody gave a chance with Tash in Tier 3. And that was a shock for me.
Yeah. Shock for me. Shock for everyone, I think, And the risk, if it was a cost cutting, whatever, like I was worried because we were talking to, I've known Andy County for a long, long time. And we were talking to him in the bar mid-season, and he was saying to me and Helen that it's not sustainable. The costs, you know, it's on the floodlights come on, it's about 1,200 quid in or something, and the gates had gone down. So it's not making money; it's losing a lot of money. So I actually phoned him up after that and said, "I'm worried, Andy. Are you considering, you know, pulling the plug on the women's team?" And he said, "No, we'll never do that. But we do need to look at money and make changes. It's not sustainable." But I wouldn't have imagined that Mike would have been one of those cuts, and the risk that it had was, well, Mike, as was Andy, a very popular guy, and Tash, that the team could. I thought maybe 4 or 5 players would leave. I didn't expect 20 to leave, and I think that was, I say, Mike, very well respected and good tactician, excellent tactician, and Andy before, players for whatever reason, whether we're not going to have another season being hammered every game. But I was talking to Andy Bullingham, and when we were losing a lot, I said, look, it's just no good for the players, it's no good for the supporters, it's no good for the club. Each game going out, and you can maybe get a point here and there, but what is the point? And Richard Clark, again, he said that we will always be really a tier 4 team. At the time, I'm thinking, well, no, just battle for it. We can do like this season. We can still hopefully survive, and then maybe have another season just the same. But what I didn't expect was that Mike Tash wouldn't be given another season, another chance with those players to have another experience of tier 3. So it's disappointing.
Yeah, and then I'd like to move on to Aid, because just so you know, I've known Aid, 15 years. He's the reason that Meg ended up going to Blues. The reason that probably he's been a big part of Meg's footballing life, from giving her the opportunity to play open age at Leafield. And you know, there are negativities between managers who take on hard jobs. I think Aid takes on the most impossible jobs. I think when he took over Stourbridge 3 weeks before the season, he got 8 players. People don't look at that. And I'm not here to protect Aid. Aid can protect himself. I've watched Aid at Leafield line pitches. I've been with him when me and him are in a truck pulling lights around for midweek games. I know I've helped sponsor the club. I know there's been disarray with money going missing from the club, which I'm not going to talk about, but lots of money going missing from the club. Aid building the youth section, creating a fitness program through COVID, and all the above. And I think Aid's biggest problem, and I speak to Aid every Monday after a game, we're mates. We talk about the football, but we're mates. And I know people are opinionated, and a lot of that can be based as fans on results and all the rest of it. I don't think people really get the passion that he has, the disappointment he feels. He's aware of the task that's in front of him. He's aware how difficult that is. And yeah, you can go, well, look what happened at Boulmere. Yeah, again, an impossible task for me.
Yeah, I don't look at Boulmere, Kenny, if I'm honest. I fully agree there, because what he went into there, he just had to steady the ship, surely, because of what went on before him. That was crazy, yeah. Yeah,
and then, you know, Mike, what you're talking about, you know, I don't want to shed any negativity on anything. I want to keep this as positive as I can, but do you know many managers who would have taken on the Stourbridge role after so many important players left? Because let's be honest, we could have. We're talking. What are we talking? 2, maybe 3 players out of that current squad. No, I'm not talking the starting 11. I'm talking the current squad at the start of that season that was still left before I took over. Is all I'm saying is how many players were left for him to then go in and rebuild that team in tier 3.
Well, when he went in, they were all still there.
Right.
So ask yourself why they left. Now, there was a meeting with Andy Bullingham. Now, Ez wasn't, most of us said what I'm told is not from Ez, because she says nothing.
Yeah.
But I think the meeting with Andy Bullingham didn't go too well. and one of the players said, I think they want us to leave. And then the meeting with Aid, I don't think that went particularly well either. And then there was a comment that Aid said, pay for me, you play for me, you pay for free. And there was obviously talk about coaches not being put on and expenses not being paid. And Aid actually said a strange comment, said, and again, this is what I've heard from a player. I wasn't in the room, so I can't say this for sure. If you want to get paid, go and sign for Boldmere. So I don't know Aid, and he does seem to be a decent guy. As said, the message he sent, because obviously the situation with Mike was that, yeah, really good, really nice messages. But I don't think perhaps it was handled well, either by the club or by Aid, that it would appear, did they just want to clear out of the players? Whether they did or they didn't, it certainly happened.
I think just to give Mark up the thoughts on that.
Can I just say something else as well? There have been 7 players leave again from the squad this season already. So something isn't quite right. Like, whereas it's gone to Worcester. Worcester have signed a couple of, well, I think 3 new midfielders. Superb. And the one has left Boldmere. Like, Worcester played Boldmere last week. Should have won. They lost 2-1. And it's an excellent setup they've got there at Worcester. But I was talking to this player's dad, and Stourbridge apparently approached this girl. I don't know what her name is. She's a midfielder, but she chose Worcester. She chose to go to a Tier 4 team that were 3rd from the bottom instead of going to a Tier 3 team, Stourbridge. Now, I'm not saying that's anything to do with Aid, but there is a problem somewhere. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the players get paid or what. But so yeah, Aid had a bit of a job on, and he's done very, very well to get in a great bunch of young players. He really, really has. So I just wish that Aid would come out and mingle. I know he's a quiet guy, it seems, but I wish he'd just come out and socialise a bit with the supporters and make himself known a bit more. But he's got a hard act to follow in Andy Fisher, Mike and Tash.
He has, but again, I'm not going to make anybody privy to our conversations and stuff, but the guy cares, and what he wants to try and create is an atmosphere where players want to play for Stourbridge and players want to play for the club, and understand, that it's not a given that they start every week. And look, one thing I've learned more than anything over all these years are football clubs will let you go like that. So why shouldn't players be the same way? Some players at higher leagues may believe they should be playing every week and don't get on, and so choose to leave and play at lower tiers to get football or get experience or whatever. I think fundamentally, and one of the things that we will agree on, is why did a 7-8-year-old Meg Hadley start playing football? Because kicking that football and being around girls and playing put a big smile on her face. A big smile on her face. She enjoyed it. But unfortunately, as you get older and you go up the leagues and things get tougher and decision making, etc., you have to evaluate what you want to do as a job. It's no different. What you want to do and what you want to achieve. I think for a lot of them players, for me, and I don't know what happened with individuals. I hear rumours, you hear conversations. It's not for me to comment on. They're not my daughters. I just think people around that era that we had with Andy and Mike was so special that some of them would want to have that emulated again as well. And it's going to be a difficult thing to do. And you go back to the clubhouse, the camaraderie, the drinking, the togetherness, the crowds that we used to have at the War Memorial, which were phenomenal. We're talking between 500 plus every single game. The burger van was thriving. Anthony singing his voice off. There were special, special days. And I don't think for a lot of people we're going to get that back, be it at Stourbridge or anywhere else locally. but I still think people are craving that. And I think that's probably what the pull is at the moment for Andy at Kidderminster. He has given that to so many players, and a lot of them players have gone back to Andy and they've gone to Kidderminster. He's already given them a special moment with the FA Cup win against Stourbridge. Yeah, I mean that was a special moment for them. But it's a difficult thing to have a small part of your football memory being so successful. And it's one of the things that, one of the if you want to move on to it, one of the subjects we're on about is what's important to players, what's important to fans and parents. Is it to play tier 3 football, or is it to play tier 5 football and actually win games, enjoy it, good FA Cup runs because you've got more games, the less games to play, etc., etc., etc. I always remember, and I'm going to refer back to this because I think the academies, centre of excellences, whatever you want to call them, the one thing that stuck out in my mind was when Meg was playing at Birmingham, and I'll use that as an example, is she'd got friends still playing grassroots football, and they were in leagues and they were winning cups and they were going out with trophies and medals. And as a kid, that's really, really important. When you start moving up the ranks and the tiers, and let's look at tier 3 where Stourbridge are at the moment, to win games is very, very difficult. And what are you actually going to win playing tier 3? And what is important about playing tier 3? And that's what you need to evaluate as a player.
Well, again, a lot of players will join Stourbridge. Do they want to join Stourbridge at the moment because they want to join Stourbridge like you'd want to join Wolves?
Or do they want to play tier 3 football?
Or are you joining because you want tier 3 football? And are you joining tier 3 football because you want to use it as a springboard, hopefully for ambitious to get onto a high level? So it's all very, very difficult. If you're a player that, well, Esne is 25, so she's pretty old. And a lot of players like her just want to enjoy their football. They're not going to be playing for England. So they will prefer most likely to play for Kidderminster. The system at Worcester is really, really good. If they can keep up this year, you've got all the kids after signing the autographs on the back of the programmes. There were great food there, the whole atmosphere, and they're getting a good attendances. And I truly believe if Kidderminster can get away from that field that they call the centre of excellence, which is a potato patch, and start playing at Agbra, they have an opportunity to do what Stourbridge did. But to the point that, if you go up to tier 4 and then you go up to tier 3, you're in a mess. How many Fleafield get promoted this season? You can't.
Well, let's talk about that because that was one of the things. So I want to hear you guys talk. But because I generally don't think teams should be put off by what's happened at maybe Stourbridge this year, because Kelster's done okay. I know that they're only 1 point above Stourbridge, but Kelster are doing and Hull are doing what we did last year. So I wouldn't want to be put off thinking, okay, they're going to go straight back down again, because if we go down this year or if Kelster go down this year, that means there's one team in the Black Country that if you want tier 3 football, you've got to either go up to Stourbridge or Kelster, because one of us will go down.
Let me interject there. If you're playing for Stourbridge or Sporting Kelster at the moment, right, as a young player, and I'll throw this question to both of you. Are you playing there because you want to play for them because you're playing tier 3? Or are you generally there because you're hoping that one of the top teams will see you perform when you're playing against them and hopefully get picked up? You look at Lexi as an example of that, going to Wolves. Why wouldn't you go to Wolves, one of the top 3 clubs probably at the time? And Wolves are probably overachieving, really, when you look at Burnley and Forest full-time and what they're doing. I mean, what Macca does there is incredible. He's got a good group of players. The players that aren't playing, you got the Cross sisters?
Yeah.
I mean, they played against us, and no disrespect to Stourbridge, I mean, you would always put your money on Wolves beating us and beating us comfortably. But neither of them featured. And again, I look at players that get a little bit older or what they're doing. Why are young players going to play for the bottom half or whatever you want to call it of tier 3 teams? Because I want to be looked at. They're hoping they'll put a performance in against one of the top half teams and they'll get looked at. and they'll move on. It isn't because they go in there thinking Sporting Kelsa, Stourbridge, Halifax, they're suddenly going to go, oh, bosh, straight out of the league, because realistically, they've already hit their ceiling.
I can agree that I think maybe Stourbridge have hit their ceiling. But I guess we'll never know what Boldmere can do because they've got a bit more money. Or, for example, who knows?
How many years have Boldmere been back in Tier 4 since they got promoted and come down? 3 years?
They went down when we went up, yeah. I'm not saying it's going to happen, Ken. But what I'm
just saying as an example of that, it's the difficult nature of trying to get back up is really hard. But I also think that Tier 3 is more like the Championship now. Got a lot of Championship players in Tier 3. And I think Tier 4 is probably where Tier 3 was a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
I think the teams in Tier 4 are so strong. I mean, go back to Worcester, Mark, as an example. If you'd have thrown Worcester into Tier 4 when we were in there, I think they'd be top half of the table, maybe higher. I don't know what you think.
What, when we were in Tier 4?
Yeah.
Where were Worcester?
No. What about if Worcester were in that league that Stourbridge were in at Tier 4? Where would Worcester be in that league?
Worcester now?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think that league has just got ridiculous, Tier 4.
Yeah.
It's
Sunday.
Because a lot of Tier 3 players have gone there.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You know, we started the show by saying what Stourbridge did for the Black Country and the West Midlands by paying expenses. They've done it again this summer. All the reserve team players have gone into the Black Country.
Mm-hmm.
All the first team players have gone across Birmingham and South. You know, what Stourbridge have created has passed and made the West Midlands stronger again, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I always remember this symbol by most of the teams when we were playing. Always, I think the last game of the season, weren't it? We were laughing and joking that we went to Leafield, and let's be honest, Leafield put a hell of a fight against us. They always have.
Was it 3-2 or 4-3?
Yeah, and they were ahead as well.
Yeah.
Daisy Clement scored, and we're all going to go dressed in different Arabs just to re-emphasise the fact to them. Just a bit of tongue in cheek, really, weren't it? But we'd all got a little bit bored of that, and. You know, I generally look at Stourbridge and think that they have been the catalyst for all these teams now to pay expenses, to improve the leagues, and to make it a better place for women to play football. I generally believe that. I just need the toilet.
Andy apparently was saying to me that they were watching Stourbridge men lose against some team, and Andy turned to Bully and said, "Why don't we develop the women's team? You know, because it's at the level that Stourbridge are at. It hadn't really been done. Like I say, they were pioneers. Let's develop the women's. Oh God, I remember at Hingley beating Darlaston or something, and there was about 100 people there. And Andy apparently was saying to Richard Clark, if we've got this amount of people watching our team play on a park pitch in Old Hill, what would happen if we actually went through the leagues, which they did? Sadly, though, it's the same old story. If you're Newcastle, Spurs, Man United, Man City, you've got the following. Stourbridge were never going to get that. No small club are ever going to get it. But no, apparently in Bully and vision to get Stourbridge where they actually got to was just superb. So hats off to them, but it's not sustainable. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Well, Mark
just
mentioned the word sustainable. So let's have that as maybe a final subject. What do we need to do to make it sustainable then? So we just mentioned there your Boldmere's, Kelsers, Stourbridge, because I want to come in at it a little bit as maybe a bit of a cynic. I don't like it when people say it's not sustainable, because I understand when the likes of Newcastle come up. I get that. You know, it's Newcastle. But when other teams in the local area are getting above us, that's not necessarily more richer, that's when I'll start to question, okay, is there more that we can do? You know, can we do more to make a revenue? So, yes, we could always cut costs.
But we're all experts, aren't we, John? We're all experts.
That's the question. You know, what can we do? I don't know. That's the question.
My point is, we're all experts about what we think clubs have. their businesses. We all think we know they've got this pot of money, or we all think we know what it costs to run football clubs and stuff like that. I mean, tier 3, tier 4 football should be about better opposition, better grounds, better gates, better experiences for players. But you can look at a lot of clubs, from women's football to men's football. They'll all have a big push. I think Leeds, as an example, I think they're an absolute fortune in transfer fees that they haven't paid. Unless they get promoted, they're in a world of trouble. I don't know how far Stourbridge can go on a budget and what their costs are and what players they can attract, which is going to get harder and harder and harder with how strong tier 4 is. I haven't got a clue what Sporting Councils are. I've seen what they've done there. The money they've spent in the ground and its quality, and I think it's lovely. But I think we also escape the fact that these clubs, Stourbridge and Sporting Council, I keep using these two as examples, they play on our own home pitches the same as the men. I look at West Bromwich Albion, who've been fluttering around, and I'm a Baggies fan, as you know, but the women have been fluttering around tier 3. And I don't know if you remember this story. They're playing at Redditch United, which is a very well-known ground to me. I live near Redditch now. I have lived in Redditch most of my life. And their game got postponed by 30 minutes because an under-12s football game was going on and went into extra time. Now, that is an absolute disgrace.
Was that against Wolves?
West Bromwich. I can't remember who it was.
I think it might have been.
But that's an absolute disgrace. So, yeah, great. West Brom are attracting players, and that'll be down to the badge. No disrespect. And you'll never escape that. And, but what have they actually achieved over the last 4 or 5 years? Nothing. They flutter around the middle of the table. They got well and truly hammered by Stourbridge. That's it. That game at home to us, and they're not even playing in an affiliated ground associated from an academy level to wherever else to West Bromwich Albion, and that's the difference. Even Wolves, Wolves, they play at Telford, and it's a lovely ground, and etc. And they play a handful of games at Molineux, but when are these clubs, the bigger clubs, should I say, get beyond the women's game when the likes of Stourbridge and Kelso are already doing it? And like you said, Mark, about Kidderminster, if Kidderminster want to improve what they're doing, the women need to play at that ground.
Well, I've been saying, Ez has been out for about 5 or 6 months, so we've been touring around, watching different clubs, Leafield, Stourbridge, Worcester, Cheltenham. And I would love to see more Kidderminster games. And people I know who live in Kidderminster, they're not going to a muddy field in Stourport. Look, at least at Hingleys, we've got Len. Was Len, wasn't it? Len with his van and his cup of soups. That field, it's an embarrassment, and it's treating the game with disrespect. So Kidderminster, you've got a great manager, you've got a great team, and you've got great opportunity. Put them on at Agbra. When they beat, well, that was a great game on it. Apart from if you're, well, I was actually kind of a bit both ways on that, because I was watching Kidderminster, and it's a bit like watching Stourbridge, and they really wanted that game more, and 100% to win the FA Cup game. That was phenomenal. But why don't they play there every week? And they are a far, like Stourbridge men are tier 7. Where are Kidder?
Well, if you're going to build the fan base, it needs to be at a ground like that. That is the only way you're going to build a fan base. That is the only way you're going to increase revenue. It's supply and demand as a business. It's very, very simple.
We were saying that we'd go and see Kidderminster for their away games, but we're not going to go and see them at home, But
I think it's right. It is happening. So talks are underway, and I'll speak to you privately, not on this, where they will potentially be playing next year, because if they do get promoted to National League, you have to have turnstiles, you have to have certain things to play in the National League. So they would have to either build on it or change it, from what I'm led to believe. And I can talk to you afterwards about that. But I think just on kiddie, we don't want to turn it into a kiddie thing. And
that was just an example of teams that
which I totally agree with.
The hierarchy, but I'm talking local teams that should be able to use the facilities and the same grounds as the men.
And you want to hold it,
I mean, did I used to like going watching. Was it Hinkley they used to play at Stourbridge?
English, yeah.
And that pitch was woeful, absolutely woeful. It was dangerous, and I think a lot of the games that we played was dangerous as well. In was it? I think a couple of them resembled blooming park pitches, didn't they? That we used to go and play at, and
Like the song. Well, there was Andy Pountney putting up the nets as well, and right at the start, that's how involved he was. As the chairman, putting up the nets at Hingley. Going back to Baggies playing at Redditch, we went to see. It was West Brom against Liverpool Feds. We couldn't get on the car park. Thought, whoa, they've actually got more than 17 people come to see them. The car park, I managed to get my little master in and squeeze it in the space. The reason it was full, there's a wedding reception going on in the clubhouse, and there was about 8 people watching the game. But, yeah, and that's if you're on there, you've got to play at your own ground. Well, why not? And Wolves, why don't they even play at Compton and open up the barn? And no, so at least we've got it right in that sense, and I just hope it stays that way.
Let me give you a tragedy that I see happening with the facilities they've got, and obviously no investment, is Solihull Moors. Looking at their position in the league, what facilities they've got. We played there in the final against Leeds. How are the women currently second from bottom and looking like they're going to get relegated to Tier 5? I'd love to know as a club what's happened there. That used to be a very successful club. You've got fantastic facilities. How have you allowed your women's team to be in that position?
Well, we went to that final, and there were up to about 2,000 odd people there. They were complaining. They said we might have to open another stand. There was one person on the bar. The queue went to Bulgaria, and these are people who have come from Leeds. And how disrespectful to treat an FA final like that.
We had half a dozen pies between 2,000 people.
No, pies, got some at half time.
Yeah.
So they're obviously totally incompetent. Remember when we played them and they wouldn't turn the floodlights on?
Yeah.
And the side pitch. And we were saying, when are the floodlights coming on? And the ref blows the whistle. That was when you had a bit of a problem, Ken, remember?
No.
With that incident. Yeah, no, we're not talking about it. But we thought they were sending off the Solihull manager. But no, you had to go and find the chairman to put the floodlights on. And then they tried, because only half of the floodlights came on, they wanted to abandon the back match even though we were winning, because only half of them would come on. So I think the answer to Solihull Moors is, they're not exactly the most.
I feel I don't support them, I don't follow them, but I also appreciate the facilities they've got. And again, I think it's just another blind eye in the women's game. And I think honestly, I think the board at Solihull Moors should feel ashamed about what they've done with the women's team. I really do. And that's what worries me with the women's game in general. It doesn't generate as much finances and this, that, and the other. But you've built a team up to be in a certain league for so long. They've lost most of their best players. We know that, and now they're second from bottom, and pretty much I can't see them getting out of being relegated in their current position.
Big game against Worcester on the 12th
on Wednesday. Clashes with Stourbridge and Albion, unfortunately.
Oh God.
Yeah. You guys, you're absolutely right, and it's in a shame. A lot of it might come down to mismanagement. It might come down to just wanting to be safe in Tier 4 and getting it wrong. You might have clubs out there that know that they don't want to go in Tier 3, but they just aim for like 8th, 9th, and 10th. And as you says, Ken, that Tier 4 is so strong now. If you take
it's incredible. It's incredible,
and it's going to get even stronger again.
How has a Leafield, not top of the league, won every game, got a 750 goal difference with the players they've got, a fantastic manager in Tash, and in if that was previous to 2 or 3 years ago, that would have been the case. I'm not saying 750 goals, that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but I'm sure Mark would agree with me. If Stourbridge were playing current Leafield in the league that we played in, that we got promoted in, we would have finished second. Mm-hmm. I generally believe that.
Because I think It's not just Leafield. I mean, Northampton only lost their second game of the league, and they're not even top. You know,
And our Peterborough keep getting it wrong.
Yeah, I know. But again, they are using the money, aren't they? You know, they are using the money. That they signed the Loughborough captain, Kaylee Hines, great player. You know, and yeah, it's not just about money. You know, and that's where we can come back to Stourbridge, because we had expenses, but what made us good was the people that we had.
Look at Donny Bowles. Donny Bowles were given the worst ever. I couldn't believe it when they were gone, right. You're struggling where you are. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick you in a real strong Northern League.
Oh, no, yeah.
Struggle even more. And the chances are now they're going to get relegated. When you look at them, their history as a club.
Yeah. Nice pies up there as well. Here's a question for you. Next season, if Kiddie go up and Tier 4 is, well, amazing league, the team's in there. I was going to say as well, Worcester only lost to Peterborough by 1 goal when Worcester down there and Peterborough up there. It's so close. Would we prefer to be in Tier 4 at Stourbridge or Tier 3 next season? Struggling.
I would suggest that some players will want to progress and try and continue in Tier 3. I don't know from a club's perspective. I don't understand the finances of the club. What would happen if they went to Tier 4? My view is if Stourbridge went to Tier 4, you'd have a whole new team again. You might end up with a new manager. And to build again at Tier 4 would be very, very difficult, as proven in Tier 3, regardless of it being Tier 4, because Tier 4 is so strong. I don't see the benefit of them getting relegated doing them any good. And small margins if they stay up as well, because next season it's just going to get tougher and tougher and tougher again. What I don't understand, and let me just throw this one about. I mean, we'll make sure we conclude by 7 o'clock. We knew this was going to go on forever. Here's a question for you, which we've not discussed. Now, this is something I spoke to about Aid. And what I said to Aid was, what I don't get are even teams like Wolves. We'll talk about the Cross Sisters. We'll talk about West Brom. We'll talk about Aston Villa, right? Now, if I'm any of those teams, why am I going to give any of my players that I think are borderline getting into the starting 11 or up and coming really good academy players to teams that may get promoted and could be a competitor next year in the league? Or why wouldn't I support teams that are in the bottom half of the league that are never going to do any damage to us, but we're going to help them as local teams to stay together? And the reason I mentioned this was, after having that conversation with Aid, I went and looked at the Burnley Twitter page to see they'd signed the young girl from Birmingham City, and I'm thinking to myself, how has that happened? Is it finances? Is it money? Is it the promise of joining them? And why would Birmingham City put a player in there like Burnley, who potentially next year could be a championship team if they win all their games? This is what I don't get. There doesn't seem to be enough support from the bigger local teams to support the likes of Stourbridge or Cowser. And is it me that just sees that?
I think that's an interesting one I do, because you look at the amount of reserve teams that's folded there as well. So, for example, I say folded. Wolves used to have a reserve team. So if you're a Wolves player that's like outside of the top 18 players, you're not going to get any game time. You might as well not even go on the coach. So where are you going? Now, I appreciate they've got a good relationship with Kelsa. So I think relationships and networking comes into that a lot. But you are right. There's players out there that should be getting game time at a high level, and they're not. And that's probably just because there is only a first team. And you can say that as far as Stourbridge, there's going to be players at Stourbridge that probably aren't getting game time. Can they help out a local team? And I think we've seen it quite a bit this year where, at our level, players are moving around Leafield, Kiddie, and Stourbridge. But yeah, there is definitely scope there. You look at Leicester, you look at Villa, you look at Birmingham. We've got those 3 academies there that are fantastic players. We know that. I managed to watch Leicester in pre-season, and they won 6 or 7-1 against a fellow Tier 3 team. I saw Villa play at Tamworth, they're under 21s, and they're magnificent, and Birmingham
But
as well. So there is scope.
But wouldn't them players develop and be better players, in my opinion, playing at tier 3 against that kind of quality opposition rather than playing against 18 to 21-year-olds in a league?
And that's what we've seen. So, like, that this new pyramid that's coming in, like with the PGA teams are going to be in the women's league. So obviously the league's expanded to 14, and that's purely, I agree, because they need to have that competition. They need to play women's football in the tiers where it actually means something. So yeah, they would. And this could potentially harm what you've just said there, Kenny, because they don't need to leave the club anymore. Because as of not next year, but the year after, they can stay with the Birmingham, they can stay with Man United and whoever, and play and develop with their own club against the same level of opposition. And it is, and then will it just become a whole monopoly where you will just see
the bigger clubs the bigger clubs will create more success and more wealth, like the FA Cup, and the smaller clubs will fade away.
And the only success I can see of it, and it's not a success for local football, unfortunately, but there will be now more eyes on the National League because you've got all of a sudden Man United, Birmingham, Villa, Leicester, all these teams playing in the National League, and more people will start watching it a little bit. But it's no good for the likes of us three who want to see Stourbridge and Worcester and Kidderminster to do well. I mean, it might do, don't get me wrong, but when you flood in the leagues with 12, I think, PGA teams, it's not great, is it?
I think from me and Mark's perspective, I mean, Meg's 22, Ez is 25. I'm happy that Meg's had a season at tier 3. I think she's done well. I'm always going to be her dad, and I am her worst critic. It's like Ez is capable of being a tier 3 player. Do we think they could play further? I don't know. Do I think that when you play full time, you train full time, it makes you a better player? Yes, it does. But there are going to be very few players that get that opportunity. But I do worry about, the hybrid models and the restructure of the leagues and what that's going to do to players and, the academies and et cetera, et cetera. And I think without reverting back to a lot of what we've spoken about, Stourbridge, with their expenses and what they did and how they changed a lot of things, were a local team that did that. And they hadn't got the politics around them to say they couldn't do it. They seen a market for it. They had a manager that could give them a model to work with, all managers with Mike and Andy. And H. Let's not forget H. We've not mentioned H. H is a good lad. Another positive figure to have around the girls. I just worry that it's going to push the game backwards, not forwards.
Mm-hmm. You know what I've just thought of, and I don't know why. That 7-2 Baggies victory. Every Sunday we go to the club, even if we go and see Worcester, we get back to the club. And there should be a poster in a frame of that game, or even the derby, 2-3 derby. There should be something. There's nothing about the women's game in the club at all. And I know that this is something we haven't touched on. You might have seen some of my comments on social media when the men have been saying to me, we don't care about the women and all this. There seems to be a genuine animosity between...
That's Mr. Brazil about that.
Pardon?
That's Mr. Brazil about that on Talk Radio.
Same sort of thing, yeah. No one cares. There's a guy at Stourbridge, I will mention his name, Ulster Jim. And yet, no one cares about the women's game. Well, I think that Stourbridge supporter, you should support the men and the women and be very proud that Stourbridge has a tier 3 team in the Football League. It's a women's team. Okay, and they have a tier 7 team that's been knocking around quite some time with the men. But there should be a framed poster of, I would say, the Derby Cup victory or the 7-2 Albion game, and it's not there. And do you remember last season when we went to Derby and Andy Pountney and Bullingham were there, and we actually thought we can beat these?
Mm-hmm. There was a belief.
Yeah, pass back wasn't given. It was a horrendous windy day. They couldn't play football. They won 2-0, and that was almost like it all kind of went wrong from there. It's weird, isn't it?
I mean, normally Jonathan's trying to type the time, and I'm a bit conscious about it as well. But I mean, if I was going to conclude, I am very grateful to Stourbridge for the memories I've been given, for what it's done for Meg, the people I've met, and throughout my journey since Meg's playing 7 or 8, I have met some fantastic people. You two are included in it, and you know, it's memories, and as we get older, and we're all getting older, you know, that's what's important. It's not what you're given, it's not what you win. It's memories, and I think Stourbridge, or anybody who was part of that, which is what we're here talking about, those 4 seasons, and especially the 2 years, the golden years. Again, there I go again. I think they're important to me and to Megan and to my family that all witnessed it, and to Livy going out and being a mascot. I think we've been lucky to be part of it, and I generally believe that. I think we've been very, very lucky, and that's a credit to the club and the people behind it, and the chairman, and you know, Bullingham, and all the rest of them. And I'm not here blowing smoke up people's asses. I'm just being genuine. What a great time we had. Let's just embrace that, because it was special.
Ken, if we've talked for nearly an hour and a half, if you could forget everything else we just said, what you've said there is the most significant and important thing. Well said, mate. And it's been a pleasure meeting you, and especially having that cob in Willenhall with you.
Best cob in the world, mate. Best cob. Whoever put cheese, black pudding, and onion in a bap are geniuses. Absolute geniuses. And
remember the Lamp Tavern in Dudley as well? That was nice.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Memories. Yeah. I remember going to Wem Town on the evening. I was with Josh, and he didn't realise you could drink 3 pints of Star of Primer in less than 10 minutes until he met me. I don't think he'll ever forget.
That was a great go, that was. G got told off for celebrating.
Yeah.
And because one of the fans had a baby with her. Bearing in mind it was 9 o'clock at night. She had a baby in a pram. And G got told off for making too much noise for celebrating. I mean, she didn't want the legs of the pitch. But...
I'm glad you brought that up. Let me just touch base. Before we go, there are some special people from your Murphys and all that, but G, I mentioned this before, Miss Stourbridge to me. Honestly, she is Miss Stourbridge to me, always will be Miss Stourbridge to me.
Yeah.
And Kez, let me just give you a quick story to finish on. So I remember Kez Allen, and it's one of the reasons I sponsored her. She gave me a very special moment of making me realise what a family environment Stourbridge was. We were playing Camden Town. Was it Camden? Not Camden Town. Court. On a pitch that had got more mud than grass. Meg was playing against a very physical, I'm being very polite here, very physical player that was bullying her, was sticking a bomb in her elbow, and realising that Meg was far superior as an athlete, but realised that she could bully her when in close. And like Meg was having a bit of an hard time. And I always remember Kez came from nowhere like an absolute freight train and has hit this girl legitimately in a tackle. And I'm stood literally half a metre away, and she's leant over this girl who's basically got an imprint in the ground, and she's gone, I suggest you leave her alone or I'll do it again. And she didn't bother her again. And that to me was Kez. I just thought, fantastic, what a player. And she is, but you know, the list of them, we haven't got long enough even now to mention the list of players that have been and gone.
And how do you draw the line? You know, how do you draw the line?
Who, like I spoke to you about, you know, Lou was the same. Ruby, you know.
Oh, Ruby. Yeah.
We could go off air now, the three of us, yeah, and we could speak probably for the next 4 hours about memories and the players and all the rest of it. Just like I said to you, I think we've been very lucky, appreciative of being part of Stourbridge and what they've given us. And if nothing else, and whatever happens in the future, I'll always be grateful.
Yeah.
I think we can say that. And I know that you've said it as well, Mark. And I know that me and the fans who haven't got players, children as players, we always say that our Stourbridge changed our lives. And if you speak to Andrew Wall, myself, I know Josh at the time as well, and I'm sure DG to a point is a newer person that's come in, but it has given us so many happy memories, and it has changed our life, because my whole life now outside of retail is all West Midlands football and National League. I never knew anything about that. I was a season ticket holder at Man United Women's for 3 or 4 years.
Here's another one. When the World Cup was on, Ez phones up and she says, I think I'm going to be on news at 10. I said, you what? News at 10 comes on. The headline, there goes. And we go to Stourbridge Football Club because they're reporting this. They were interviewing everyone. The guy from South Carolina, and there's Ez. Yeah, I think we're going to be. I don't know how amount of talks. I had about 7 pints of cider. All of these memories. That just, yeah.
It is. And Esme falling over on the TV as well.
Yes, that was funny. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll carry on for another 10 minutes after we press the stop button. But no, look, thank you very much for joining us, Ken and Mark. You know, once every now and again to go live and get a few fans sharing memories, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's nice. I really do.
If I've offended anybody, I apologise. I've just been honest, and
I don't think
I'm not. I express my thoughts in the interest of women's football, and I generally do, and what it should be.
I think we all do.
So. If I hadn't offended everybody, I also apologise.
Yeah, he'll be back on.
and if you think I've done a good job of keeping these guys under control today, please stick a thumbs up on the video, because the amount of messages I had going into this, and I can see the amount of people watching now and that has been watching. I'm sure some of them might have come in for fireworks, but that was never the intention at all. I think we all love Stourbridge. I mean, Mark, your daughter doesn't even play at Stourbridge, and she had them for a long time, and you still come back every Sunday and put money behind the bar, and you know, we still obviously think very highly of the club, don't we, of course, and all the players. Just away from this then, so we have got a couple of videos coming up. So if you're watching this, it means that you're a Stourbridge fan, so you may know Senna Robinson. So Senna Robinson is currently going to be going out at 8 o'clock, a video with her on my other channel, Investigates Women's Football. It's a generic channel. So if you want to listen to Senna Robinson interview, it lasts 20 minutes, a little bit about how she came through the ranks at Stourbridge and now playing at Kidderminster Harriers. Make sure you watch that one. There's another one the Stourbridge fans might be interested in. Rosie Embley's dad, so our captain's dad, Richard Embley, spoke very well regarding the Cheshire area of football. That's on that same channel. And also Phoebe Hill and Ellie Maylock did a radio show with me earlier this week. That's going to go out on Sunday morning. So lots of content coming up, and I'm sure there'll be even more next week as well. So plenty to keep your eyes open, keep peeled, keep you on the socials, and we'll advertise it. But thank you very much, Ken. Thank you very much, Mark.
Cheers,
thank
John.
you everybody in the
speak to you, Mark.
and I'll see you again soon.